Hello again, everyone. In this lesson, we're going to learn about forming the past tense in Japanese. So, if we're talking about the past tense, the first thing you should know about is deshita. Deshita is just the past tense form of des. So, if des means to be, or is, am, and are, deshita means was and were. For example, if I were to say, Takashi-san wa sensei deshita, that would mean Takashi was a teacher. What about the past tense form of other verbs? Well, we know there are three types of verbs in Japanese: ru verbs, u verbs, and irregular verbs. So let's look at ru verbs first. Now remember, to form the non-past tense of a ru verb, we drop the ru and replace it with mas. If we want to change this from the non-past tense to the past tense, we change mas to mashita. So the verb ageru, which means to give, would become agemashita. Miseru, to show, would become misemashita. And neru, to sleep, would become nemashita. So for a quick example sentence, if I said, Watashi wa Mayumi-san ni purezento o agemashita, that would mean I gave Mayumi a present. And just to be clear, purezento means present in Japanese. And yes, this is another English loanword. So we've gone over the positive past tense for ru verbs, but what about the negative past tense? Well, if you remember, for the negative non-past tense, we drop ru and replace it with masen. If we want to form the negative past tense, we do the same thing, but we also add deshita after the masen. So, ageru, to give, would become agemasen deshita. Miseru, to show, would become misemasen deshita. And neru, to sleep, would become nemasen deshita. So, if I were to say, Watashi wa heya de nemasen deshita, that would mean I did not sleep in my room. And to be clear, heya means room, and de we can think of as our location particle. We use this particle to state the location where something happens. If we were to translate it into English, we could think of it as serving the same role as the prepositions at, in, or on. When it comes to its placement in a sentence, we place it after the location where something takes place and before the verb in the sentence. So we've gone over forming the past tense for ru verbs. Now let's take a look at how to do that for u verbs. Now to review, to form the non-past tense with an u verb, first, we drop the u from the end, and then we replace it with imas. The two exceptions, if we have an u verb that ends in su, we drop the su and replace it with shimas. And if we have an u verb that ends in tsu, we drop tsu and replace it with chimas. To form the past tense of an u verb, all we have to do is use mashita instead of mas. So, au, to meet, would become aimashita. Kau, to buy, would become kaimashita. Yomu, to read, would become yomimashita. Hairu, to enter, would become hairimashita. And notice this is another u verb that does end in iru. And matsu, to wait, would become machimashita. So, if I said, Watashi wa Takashi-san to aimashita, that would mean I met with Takashi. And you may notice I just introduced a new particle there, to. To is a particle that we use to link two or more nouns. It can mean and it can be used in that way. So for example, if you put to between two nouns, it can serve a similar role to and. If I were to say, Takashi to Michiko wa toshokan ni ikimashita, that would mean Takashi and Michiko went to the library. And notice, again, Toshokan means library in this case, another new vocabulary word. To can also be used to mean with. So for example, if I said, Takashi wa Michiko to Toshokan ni ikimashita, that would mean Takashi went to the library with Michiko. Notice that in this case, to comes after both nouns instead of between them. One more thing about this particle. When we use to mean with, we can also add the phrase ishoni after it. Ishoni means together in Japanese. So, if I were to say, Takashi wa Michiko to ishoni toshokan ni ikimashita, Takashi went to the library together with Michiko. Now, how about making the negative past tense with u verbs? Well, the negative non-past tense, we just drop the u and replace it with imasen. If it's an u verb that ends in su, we drop the su and replace it with shimasen. And if it's an u verb that ends in tsu, we drop tsu and replace it with shimasen. If we want to form the negative past tense, we do the same thing, but we add deshita to the end. So, au becomes aimasen deshita. Kau, to buy, becomes kaimasen deshita. Yomu, to read, becomes yomimasen deshita. Hairu, to enter, becomes hairimasen deshita. And matsu, to wait, becomes machimasen deshita. So, if I said, Watashi wa Romeo to Julietto o yomimasen deshita, that would mean I did not read Romeo and Juliet. And finally, we have our irregular verbs. And there are only two of them, so I'm going to go straight into forming the past tense. Suru becomes shimashita, and kuru becomes kimashita. So if I said, Konshu no suiyobi, watashi wa rekishi o benkyou shimashita, that would mean, this Wednesday I studied history. The negative past tenses of these words would be shimasen deshita and kimasen deshita. So if I say, Watashi wa Kato sensei no jugyo e kimasen deshita, that would mean I did not come to Professor Kato's class. Now, before we move on to our practice section, we're going to learn a little bit more vocabulary. Kissaten means cafe. Asa gohan means breakfast. Hiru gohan means lunch. Ban gohan means dinner. Kagaku means science. Eiga means movie. Tatemono means building. And kowai means scary. And just to be clear, this is an E adjective. Okay, now let's try making some sentences using the grammar and the words that we've learned. I bought a coffee at the cafe. Watashi wa kissaten de kohi o kaimashita. We ate dinner at 6 o'clock p.m. Gogo rokuji ni watashi tachi wa ban gohan o tabemashita. Last Thursday, did you see a scary movie? 先週の木曜日、あなたは怖い映画を見ましたか？ Was Wan Chan a good dog? Wan Chanはいい犬でしたか？ Toshi did not do the science homework. Toshi-san は科学の宿題をしませんでした。I did not enter the big building. Watashi wa ookii tatemono ni harimasen deshita. And that's it for this lesson. I'll see you in the next one. Ja, mata.